Welcome back
Oh,
to Accessible Intelligence, Season 2, Episode 2. I am, as always, your host, Sam. And today we are celebrating many launches with our co hosts. So maybe as part of the introduction, we can have everyone briefly say who they are and what they've launched. So, Megan, do we want to start with you?
Yes. Hi, guys. I'm Megan. I, for the past 3 months, have been building a career exploration platform called Fig, and we just launched this past week. Yay.
Yes. And we will get way more into that as well. Hillary, you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Hillary. I just recently wrapped up a writing series that I was completing on Substack, and I'm currently working on building a startup as well.
Amazing. And Austin.
I'm Austin. I just launched a new hate for hot yoga and a new series on Substack called Compute Compete.
Yes. And we are all doing very building things. Of course, I'm still doing this Substack. And on my other Substack, Cities Decoded, I've been lucky to have a lot of people want to write and be part of it, and really excited to see where that goes. So, because this is first and foremost a launch party for Fig, Megan, do we want to start with where things are at? We're about a week into a launch. How many users do we have? What have the most common bugs been? And where do we stand with Fig?
Okay, yes. Yeah, so launched exactly a week ago.
Yeah.
As of today, we have 2,500 users, which is awesome. Um, I guess taking us back to launch night, I kind of on a random Wednesday, which was last week, we were like, let's just launch it. There's a million things we could be doing to make it better, but what if we just launched it and just saw what happened? So we were up until midnight, just getting through the bugs we could see. And we're like, this looks great. Let's just full send. And we're like, okay. And I made a reel about it. And I was posting throughout the night on where we were at with it. And then I sent out the first email to the first 500 people because I have an email limit for sending 500 emails. And I was like, all right. But prior to that, we had built up a wait list of about 3,000. So that made the launch, I think, a lot easier. But essentially, when I sent out that email, I found out quickly that it was just going to everyone's spam. So no one really saw that anyway. And the people who did try it were trying it from my Instagram, but there were a million issues. People couldn't get past the authentication button because the button didn't work. Or people I don't know, couldn't generate roadmaps because something wasn't rendering, or sometimes they just got the loading screen for an hour and a half. And I don't know why people were waiting for an hour and a half, but I felt a lot of love that people thought they had confidence that something would work, just sitting and staring at a colorful screen change. Um, so a lot of learnings from that. I think I learned that even if it might work on my system doesn't mean it'll work on everyone else's. And I found that depending on your type of computer you were on, sometimes the interface was different, or just how it loaded, which was surprising. I didn't realize that could be a thing. Um, and yeah, just if you were in a different time zone or country, there were different security problems. So
Yes.
that that led us to be up until 6 a.m. that night. Um, but ever since then, the very basic features all work, which is awesome. And now I've just been getting good feedback on what could be better, which is awesome. Um, and I finally got a at domain email, so now my emails
Oh,
hopefully
good.
don't go to spam. Yeah.
Yes. And maybe talk a bit more about what are these basic features? What is Fig as a platform for people who might not know?
Yeah. So Fig is a career exploration platform. Currently, what it does, it ingests information from your resume and your YouTube watch history to try to get a better sense of what your interests are, what your previous experiences are, to suggest possible career paths you might not have thought of before. And the whole point of, I guess, the experience and how we designed it is to be a bit of a journey that takes you through from what you like were interested in as a child to up until like what you were doing in college or high school as your extracurriculars to help you kind of like reflect on that through this chat interface, to help you reflect on like who you are and what you could be. And then through like an interactive feature, you can plan out a roadmap and then it'll generate 3 different possible paths. And yeah, those are the main features. Still working them out to try to figure out how we can make the output better. But yeah.
If I
Well,
may
let's give you
ask,
some.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, go
before that,
ahead.
why did you choose the YouTube? I think when Hillary and I first used it, we were like a little shocked and a little worried. We were like, do we want to upload a YouTube history to this? It's like it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, we tried like connecting other social media platforms because we thought like, your For You page says a lot about you. I've come to realize like if you look at your friend's For You page, you could probably be like, yeah, that makes sense. But these social media platforms are very strict with, sharing user data, which makes sense. So you can't like plug into them in any way. And we thought another great maybe source of information would be YouTube, except I think this has proven to be very hit or miss because I only use YouTube for music, but I know people who use YouTube for a lot of other things. And for very select people, YouTube is very encompassing of like their hobbies and their interests. And so we were like, this could be interesting. It may work, it may not work. And we found it to be quite hit or miss, but just thought it would be like an interesting experiment for now.
Yes. Well, the three of us have been using Fig, and I'm curious, Hillary and Austin, besides the YouTube history analysis, what has been your take on Fig so far? Let's hear from the users.
Hmm. I will say I was one of the people who had the loading screen of death, and I waited, and it eventually worked. It worked, but it took like 10 minutes.
Oh no!
But I waited that 10 minutes just because I was so excited. I think what was interesting for me, and my first time using it, I realized it took me sort of, or maybe this is how I used it. I think there's probably a lot of different ways. Because I don't know if, I don't think you mentioned it, but like there's this interesting process where after you upload all your information, everything you've watched ever, then there's a little like chat bot as if you're chatting with like an intern. I think it calls itself an intern. And it's this like cute, fun little moment where it's asking you more questions, trying to draw out what you might want to do. And for me, I kind of just told it what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it worked quite well. But it was good just seeing the different paths. In the like what you could do essentially.
Yeah. I think I will say one thing, I just to stay on the YouTube point a little bit, that was a surprising aspect for me because I think I've mentioned this on previous episodes, but I watch a lot of day in the life videos. So there's a lot of like lifestyle and running things. These are like typically the things that I watch like when I'm at the gym. Usually I'm like, okay, like now is the time to like get motivation, or just like, creators who I really enjoy just about like taking care of themselves and their health. And that's a lot of what I consume like in my free time. And so I think that really skewed my sort of suggestions for what I could be, which I think my initial reaction was like, this doesn't quite seem aligned to what I like imagine as a future career path. And it was interesting too, because like in the chat, I think I had mentioned like stuff related to like law or public policy. But I think like it's actually been like since getting those outcomes that are like, oh, like a content manager or something like that, like I've been actually thinking about it like since then, like kind of just like, oh, like that's an interesting like career path. And like, I don't know, like it is like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I think growing up, I was actually always very interested in like very creative industries and specifically like ones that are centered around narrative and taking advantage of social media and all of that. And I don't know what exactly that means in terms of like my future in terms of chasing those paths directly. But I think it was a nice reminder to me that those are like very much legitimate career paths that I once very much did see for myself before I got into like the consulting, like very highly professionalized sort of paths. One other thing I will say I think I mentioned this in a message to you, which is that I really appreciated all like the other features of Fig. Like I think the main thing that brought you to it was, at least in the beginning, it's like you take the test, right? Like, it's like quiz, like what are your career paths, right? But I had a whole lot of appreciation for like all the other features that were baked into it, which just created this overarching I guess, environment, this culture of like choose your own path. Like truly like don't worry too much about like what's pre-established, what you should be doing. Like and you gave all these examples of people who are like successful, right? And showcasing their philosophies. That's just one example of like the other features that you had. But I think that's actually what really stood out to me about the Fig experience because that's so personal to you and so specific to your overarching vision for not just creating like the test that went into it, but this overarching experience of like, like imagine a different world where you can choose your own path. And here is like an ecosystem that will empower you to do so. So, yeah. Wow. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Speaking of some of the other features, there's also a community feed. And some people were talking about how they were surprised at how engaged they were. A lot of people are really, really proud. One person said, uploading your YouTube watch history is absolutely genius. You can get so much more information from about that person than any CV. And I feel like that is indicative of a lot of what we were saying as well. I personally had a content strategist path, which I think makes a lot of sense given that I do a lot of work with content generally. And I like how it feels like it's a specialized path, but it's so flexible where you don't feel like you're confined to just one path, which I think is the whole point, where you want to find that balance of guidance, but also flexibility. So that is something I really enjoyed. And I'm literally looking at it right now. So I can like flip my screen and there's all of these wonderful nouns and adjectives to describe me. And if you're listening to this, I'm sorry you cannot see this beautiful circular career life that is laid out for me. And I know that everybody in Fig gets to experience that. So, Megan, where are we now heading into week 2? I'm sure there's still bugs to fix and feature requests to honor, but yeah, where are we heading for the next week with Fig?
Yeah, that's a great question. So thank you guys for like being the first people to try it personally, because you guys were like one of the first to actually send me feedback, and I don't know, it's really cool to kind of experience from for the first time from someone watching or like getting feedback from people using something that I've been staring at for months. Like I think it was really cool that you guys like discovered like the side features because those like I wasn't really sure what to do with them, but I they were like a part of this vision I had. And I thought I'd just leave it there, even though like the main thing was the roadmaps, and it's really cool that you guys like resonated with that. I guess for this coming week, I'm trying to figure out how to optimize the cost that I'm sending. It's actually quite expensive to run Fig, which is so funny. Yeah, the API costs alone over the past week have been like I think I've spent like $60 on the API. I spent a lot of money on Claude. I think like $100 on Claude. And then
Yeah.
like hosting fees, $100. Wait, why? Sorry, can you explain the cost for Claude? Yeah, okay. So,
Like that.
well, I'm actually using Claude for the coding agent, but I was using Cursor before, and I just like Cursor was okay. Love Cursor. I've been using Cursor for a year, but then when I was in SF, people were like, "If you're not using Claude, like, what are you doing?" And I felt like I was such a noob, and I was like, "Okay, I'll try Claude," and it was actually kind of life changing. So I did end up paying $100 for it, which is crazy.
Yeah. Sam
How did
Altman tweeted today, he said that Anthropic is for expensive people or rich people or something like that. So you might be in
Funny.
that tier now.
Oh no. Yeah.
how did you decide what API to use? Because I know that's something Hillary's going through right now. Not to jump, but
Okay, I can't wait to hear about that.
you guys can discuss.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm on ChatGPT's API for now. I think just because I feel so ingrained in the open AI culture, but I definitely like everyone in SF kind of like is switching over to Claude. So I'm intrigued to know like how you're thinking about that too. Oh, people don't really seem to like Gemini, and I haven't really tested it out, but people like it for image gen and video gen,
But not
but not
API.
coding, not so much the API.
And is there any talk of using like Chinese LLMs?
No,
Really?
no.
Hmm.
Mm, which is also interesting. Yeah, there's very much like a if you're in the US, you use like American models type sentiment. Um,
Cursor famously used a Chinese model.
that is true.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of like US China talk like in SF, and we can talk about that more too. But
Makes sense.
yeah. What were we talking about? Wow, so many things to talk about. But yeah, Claude Cursor. Oh yeah, so getting costs down. That's what we're thinking about. And trying to figure out how to get people to keep coming back to the site once they've gone through using it once, because I think it's a cool tool that a lot of people are just trying once and then never using again. So they're trying to figure out retention.
I think that's probably the biggest, the biggest question for me, right? So I'm sure you're still working through it, but like, what are some of your preliminary thoughts and like, what is like the draw and like, and how do the other features play into it, if at all?
Yeah. So I think we're trying to get people to come back by making it more of a social thing. Like I would love for the chat feature to be more of like one of the main features, because I think once you've like done the simulation thing and kind of like envision this like hypothetical life, what would really ground it is if then you could take like that insight and chat with people who like have gone through that before or like have experienced things similarly. And so we're trying to figure out how to make this something social, except being cognizant of the fact that people don't really want to like download another app or like, you know, like people are kind of have like app fatigue. Like, how do you make it kind of more seamless into what already exists, but also keep it like in the same loop of like come back to Fig and interact with this environment? Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Well, we're down 1 week. It's up onwards and upwards. And I think the fact that Big is out and it's launched has already been a huge achievement in and of itself. So definitely want to give you your flowers on that. I feel like you've been working on this for a very
Thanks,
long
guys.
time, and they've been very, very significant changes. And I'm sure there will be more to update as we go forward. Hillary, we were already talking a bit about what you're cooking up. Do you want to explain the story behind posts like 2026.02.02, testing the prompt and brainstorming the interface, for example?
Oh, are you talking about the? Sorry, are you talking about the posts?
I know you pulled out the government
Yeah.
name.
Well, it's
I
describing
understand.
your
Okay,
journey.
I understand. Okay,
Yeah.
give me okay. Um, I can start by just giving a bit of context into it, and I'm not going to go too deep into it. Long story short, critical thinking tool. Similar functionalities to a typical chatbot, but the goal is rather than to really optimize for giving you the best answers, which pretty much all of the existing LLMs are doing right now, it's optimizing for facilitating the user's critical thinking process. So really focused on process rather than outcome. What's the question?
Well, I think the question that I want to follow up there is how have you been documenting it? Because it's been pretty in depth. I know we're only 3 meetings in, but how are you balancing actually working on it and documenting? Because I feel like, again, the documenting, you get pretty in the weeds there, like how you're feeling, how your co-founders feeling, the issues you guys are running into. Yeah, well, how's the process been for documenting this process-based platform?
Yeah. I also want to just like fully put it out there. Like I am doing this with someone else. I'm doing it with Brendan. He's a high school friend and we've been talking about working together on this project for a while. So in terms of thinking about the documentation of it, I view it as, I don't know, critical to the whole project. I don't know how to articulate that more cleanly, but I think really everything entrepreneurial that I've done, right? It started with my Substack. It started with writing. And I think when I think about the type of impact that I want to make in the world, I see it through the written word, honestly. And I think that's the way that I communicate best. So I, it's in particular because I have a co-founder as well, and he is more technical. I do see a big part of my value add as like being able to help tell the story behind it. In terms of why documenting is important, I think we've talked about it actually a bit on this platform, but there is a really big narrative with startups, especially with people our age, just like people who are super cracked. You know what I mean? People who just like wake up, they're like, I'm gonna vibe code something for like 24 hours. They're gonna make it a whole YouTube challenge, vibe code for 24 hours, and then suddenly they have
Sounds
like
like Megan.
millions of dollars in funding, and it's like that is not me and Brendan. Like we've been working on it for at least like a month now and been talking about it for like months beyond that. And I think to that point, it's like our goal is to really make this good. Like our goal isn't to break into the startup ecosystem for the sake of breaking into the startup ecosystem, but to create a thoughtful product. And I think a big part of the sort of marketing for that is really showcasing all the thought that goes behind the product. Hence, like the detail of the documentation, because I think that these conversations are important and are a big part of just building, right? And I think understanding the theory behind it is just as important as understanding the product itself. And I think that story is something that I've always been very passionate about as someone who writes, and definitely a dimension that I want to bring into this process of building something.
Yes. Can you talk a bit more about how these conversations with Brendan usually go? Like who starts it off? Where do you feel like you guys are like disagreeing the most, agreeing the most? And how do they end as well?
Um, yeah, like
It's like Real Housewives or Silicon
it's kind of funny because like when I go into these meetings, I'm like, literally, who am I? Like, I'm like, I am not like a product manager. I'm not a project manager. I literally am like, I feel like I'm like organizing for like a club meeting or like, I think probably the closest thing, honestly, is like preparing for our meetings, like between the four of us, right? Where it's like
Yes, and so much
setting.
prepreparation goes into that.
I mean, but
Incredible
there's just
amounts.
some, and to be fair, it doesn't always have to be a lot of preparation, right? What's important is like literally having an outline. Like just the simple act of having something in preparation for a meeting compared to having nothing is like a huge game changer. It does not have to be detailed, it does not have to be thought out, but even just having the contours to guide the conversation is just such a big thing. So I go into the meeting with an agenda. Um, Usually, I set that agenda a few days before the meeting, just based on what we talked about during the previous meeting, the specific benchmarks that we said we wanted to hit, and also just keeping in mind what is our long term goal? Like, are we on track to meet that goal? For example, right now, our biggest sort of deadline is wanting to create a prototype by the end of February. A little bit
Mm,
ambitious, but every week I'm like, are we on track to do this? Like, yes or no? If not, let me know. But if yes, we need to make sure, okay, like what exactly is the next step? And for that, I defer a lot to Brendan because he is the more technical person. Like he is more involved in the weeds of like building the sort of the product. So I defer to him on that. Yeah, during the meetings, we kind of a big part of it recently has just been going through our progress, whether it be like research or testing things out. Like last week, Brendan was testing out APIs, and it's just a lot of conversation. Like, and it really just comes down to that, and then in that way, it really resembles a lot of what we've been doing with accessible intelligence and launch too, which is like just purely having different perspectives on something. Just brings value to it. Like it's greater than some of its parts. You know what I mean? Like it's not it doesn't necessarily feel all that crazy in the moment, but what's significant is just the act of being there. And then when I see like myself documenting those conversations, it's like really legitimizing those interactions, right? And extending them beyond like our FaceTime call or our in-person meeting. Really it's really that simple. It's just two people having a conversation. Like it's just like Like, for example, we're like, do we want this product to involve STEM? Like, open question. Like, and I was like, hey, like, you're the more STEM person. Like, I'm going to have my position, but I want you to make your case. Like, do you agree with me? If not, like, how do we talk through this? It's literally just conversations. And at the end, I'm just like, okay, like, back into like product management. I'm like, okay, what are the next steps? Like, are we on track? Like, what is our next meeting? Are you sure this time works? Okay, great. Put it in the calendar. I'll see you then. So yeah, pretty basic. Learned a lot from like my college extracurriculars and a lot from launch. It's
Quick,
not that complex.
quick question. So you said making a startup is simple in your words. But I wonder, because maybe I'm classifying you wrong, but I would say from what I did know of you before you become a startup founder, I wouldn't put you in the archetype of being like a builder. It's like when I think of builders, it's like someone with CS knowledge or someone like an engineering knowledge, someone who has that more creation background in a way. And I think we've talked about this before, but like um the what's the other side called? It's like engineering and then like literary backgrounds, more like knowledge based humanities backgrounds. I wouldn't necessarily call builders for whatever reason. What would you say? Has the way you've seen yourself changed as you've started doing this and actually building a product? Or maybe like what would you say to someone who does come from a humanities background, doesn't think of themselves as a builder, so maybe feels that disconnect from like doing a startup or an app, or that inhibition of actually building and creating something?
That's a good question. And I think it really just come from the particular connotations of being a builder. I've actually talked about this with Sam a lot, but I think especially from our major in BGA, where we're building slide decks, where we're doing a lot of project based work. You
And what
have
does
the
BJ stand
experience.
for people who
Business
don't
and Global
know?
Affairs. Business and Global Affairs, the major that we were a part of together, Sam and I. We were doing a lot of project based work that was really coming up with an idea and then taking it to the finish line. And a lot of it is like setting objectives, having a clear sense of what the final work product is. And really, that is a lot of like what I'm applying to this. So you're exactly right in the sense that like people from a humanities background, you people have the skills to do it, but there does tend to be this barrier in perception because builder, I think, has such a particular connotation within tech. But really, like everyone is like building things. Like when you write an essay, think about the process that goes into organizing it, into structuring it, brainstorm, and then taking it to a final product that you that continually iterate, refine, but then submit. Right? That's a product, right? It's language, but language is clearly powerful.
Yeah, I think builder is something that gets tossed around a lot at Notion because even though most people who use Notion aren't technical or have technical backgrounds, you're still building some pretty complex builds, especially once you involve agents, automations, formulas. You're thinking in a very similar mindset. So yeah, we like to say that at Notion it's for builders, thinkers, and you could be technical or non-technical. It doesn't really matter. Megan, you also have a co-founder, so I'm curious when Hillary was talking about how she talked with her co-founder, what resonates in your experience and maybe what differs as well?
That's a good question. I guess for context, I just started working with my co-founder about 2 weeks ago. And
Yeah.
we did not have like as long of like a history of knowing each other as Hillary did, but we did meet a few times in undergrad. Um, and she studied CS. I'd say she's more technical than I am. But we've kind of been splitting like the technical work. Um, and I guess because we maybe we just like approach work a little differently, but we're I think not type A type people, which comes with like its pros and cons, but we don't like structure like our meetings very clearly and we don't like plan when we'll see each other next. We just kind of like assume things will happen. And somehow they kind of do. But it's always like beautiful. Like I love like working on things with Hillary because I know that she'll structure everything to the T, and it's
There
beautiful, and
could
I actually
be
love
there's
it.
many paths to
I just
success.
don't
There's
do it
many
for
paths to
myself.
success.
So yeah, I just it feels like throwing cake batter at a wall. You're like, I think it's gonna work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had a
Yeah.
better structure for that. I hope. Yeah.
Hey, whatever works for you. You've launched an app. You clearly get along well enough with the co-founder. That's
Yeah.
what
So
matters
what
right now.
resonates?
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, well, where do you find the
I think,
similarity
yeah.
with Hill and Brett?
Just to keep it alive.
Oh yeah, what resonates? Okay, I think like being like very much aligned on the same path. I think that's the I think even though our methods of doing that look different, I think like both resonate on the fact that like it was really important for us both to find co-founders that just like fundamentally had the same mission and vision that we had going into looking for co-founders. And um yeah, I think like everything from there just kind of like works easily because as long as you have that core like value like as like your north star, everything that like works towards that is kind of like puts you in the right direction. So yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Let's switch from co-founders to new partnerships. So, Austin, Compete, number one, you are launching this new series, but you're not doing it by yourself. So, you want to explain a bit about how this series has come to be and how the reaction to the first piece has been?
Yeah. So, I also have a startup, also have a co-founder, kind of crazy. Our dynamic is insane. No, but yeah. So I think coming to this, it was, there were two different forces that kind of led me to it. First, before it, I was writing this series called This Week in the World. It was, every week I just put down a couple of notes to articles that I'd read and found interesting. It was this strange mix of I'd gone into the habit of putting it out, but then a little upset I didn't put enough effort in because I put it out every Sunday. But it meant to be something that was more chill. So after a lot of thinking, and hearing from people who had advised me to write stuff and focus on stuff that's a little more specific. That way, I think it resonates more. It has a little bit more of a niche. And for myself, I think it develops more of an expertise. I started thinking about putting out this newsletter called Compete, which focuses on the AI stack globally. Looking, I think, especially because at first I was thinking, maybe writing about something China related because I think that is something that's very popular on Substack right now. But then I think there is a couple like people focus on Chinese AI or people focus on American AI, open source AI. Like there's AI kind of has its niche, especially in Substack. But what I had found, and actually I found the article first and then thought more about this idea for compete was in the first piece, there's an article about South Korea and it's how they're basically creating an entire tournament, a competition to create an incubator for a sovereign AI model. And so as I was thinking about that, I was like, that's fascinating. You hear about US, you hear about China. I've never heard about like Chinese or South Korean AI ideas. And I thought further, I'm like, well, I don't really know what's going on in Brazil, which is the second part of the first episode, or all these different countries. Yet it is something that is touching every single country. And so I had this idea for this newsletter, was going to write it. And then I also thought, well, how can I both try to grow my own Substack, but also try to make it into more of a thing. So partnered with another organization I've been writing for, European Guanxi. And so it's double posted on both mine and their Substacks. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I think that is really cool that you're able to turn an existing relationship into something that feels more you. I mean, geopolitical AI is so up your alley right now, and I definitely think it's been underreported. I'm curious, besides South Korea and Brazil, what are other countries that we should be looking out for as people who do generally just deal with American and Chinese AI news?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's most interesting with that is when you look at the US and China, a lot of it is this hyper focus on what's called the AI race in terms of looking at purely how can AI get more and more intelligent? How can it get smarter? Who's going to reach AGI or artificial general intelligence first? And I think that is an important question, an important thing to consider. But I think what that is missing is how AI is actually deployed and within society, and um, that is a question that's going to happen everywhere in the world. So, you can't really just look at US or China with that. And I think, I mentioned Brazil. Um, the other thing that is super interesting is the dynamic that of compute that comes into this. And that's the first part of compete, obviously. But the idea that you can't even have models without compute or computational capacity, which comes from data centers. You can't really have data centers unless you have, semiconductors from either US or Chinese sources, majority. So it's this whole almost creating a value chain similar to, I try to liken it to, um, you know, the colonial period and the idea of, do you have industrial infrastructure for a modern economy? And if you don't have industrial infrastructure, then you have an extractive economy where a lot of your output is this resource. And so I think this is something that does have much greater impact in that. And I think that's where the question of looking outside of the US and China comes into play, is looking at which country will be getting these data centers, will then be able to use those data centers to create either domestic models or deploy more. And how does that create tiers as, the AI plays out?
Right. So which countries are those?
I think you're seeing a lot of countries that I think you need a right mix of resources, like energy, lands, and capital. And so I think right now you're seeing Brazil, partially because it has a lot of um, green, renewable energy. You're seeing Malaysia, because it is in this middle ground, I think, between the US and China. The Gulf regions, because a lot of capital and a lot of resources in terms of energy. Um, I saw a little bit something the other day about how Central Asia might become a compute hub for Europe, where sells, has all this land, in a way, another sort of extractive economy, has all this land, has all this energy, so it can, in space, so it can create these data centers, but then will ship off the compute to Europe, which will do the higher value service in terms of either, crunching the data into a training set and into a model, or using that model into vertical AI services that it sells back. Really every single country, I would say. So that's what I'm
Right.
looking forward
It's
to.
a
Is with
worldwide
every
thing. Yes.
episode, hopefully going to a new
It's
country.
geopolitical AI. And
Yeah.
yes, there will be many countries featured. Megan, you had mentioned briefly in SF, there were talks between US AI models and softwares versus Chinese. What were those talks like based on your experience?
Yeah, that was interesting. I met like a couple of Chinese robotics founders, and they were trying to enter the US market, and they were just finding it impossible. They were essentially like, we thought we'd come, see what it'd be like, and we were kind of like right in that, yeah, this is just not the time for us to be here. We'll come back in like 4 years and see if markets will be more open. But I think it is interesting. Like you mentioned, Cursor is using Chinese models, and I think amongst the developer community, it was very much like everyone who's a developer loves like open source, and Chinese models are just open source and American models typically aren't. And I think that's causing a lot of risks, it seems, like amongst a very technical community that cares a lot about this. Like, how important is open source? And if it's important to you, are we then going to look outside of the US for this technology? Yeah. So I thought that was definitely interesting.
Austin, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, does that sound about right with what you looked into? I mean, you have looked a lot at US and China? I know that you're looking at other countries too, but is that aligning with what you're seeing as well?
I think it is large scale lining up. I think one of the most interesting questions in AI, especially, is AI is sadly, it isn't a research question. It isn't, a nonprofit lab looking into this. These are businesses that are creating AI and looking to deploy them. So then you get into the question of how do you fundraise for that? How do you get profitable from that? And you're seeing this divergence between, like you said, most American models are closed source. I think a lot because of that. If you look at Anthropic, if you look at OpenAI, there is this money crunch. They need to start drawing revenue. Whereas Chinese AI, I've heard a lot. The open source is partially because at first it was seen up as a catch up effort. So you had that open source to be able to share resources, to be able to share these models. But it is quickly, and this was in the first piece I wrote. Open source is also a way to gain market share, to gain people using it. And that's quickly what Chinese models are becoming is, there's this debate whether they're at the frontier capabilities of American open models. And even there's a couple speaking events where these head of Chinese labs said that these open or these closed source alternatives actually are in a way pulling ahead because they have this computability, which, you could say either it's geopolitical or it's economic and that they have the money for it. But these open source models are, as you said, becoming global in a way. And because they're open source, because they're a little cheaper, very much so shows just a diverging business path, perhaps.
Yes, well, a lot more to follow with Compete on Substack Weekly, and we are excited for it equally with Fig and Hillary's unnamed startup. Is it unnamed or is there a name? Is it an
We'll
untitled
just keep it
project?
unnamed for now.
Yes,
It's in
that reminds
stealth.
me of it's in stealth. When Rachel Sennett was planning her I Love LA series, like it was called an Untitled Rachel Sennett project for so long. We just started calling that even as they were making the show. Like, okay, like what's the next episode of the Untitled Rachel Sennett project? So I could see a similar arc for Hillary, where just we keep referring to it as the Untitled Hillsing project and Brendan, but in that order, Untitled Hillsing Project and Brendan. That's how I will be thinking about it. Let's close out with what I've been up to with Cities Decoded. I think we can start with Hillary explaining what she thinks Cities Decoded is, and I can fill in the gaps. So this is a friendship test. So Hillary,
Oh
what is Cities
God.
Have to do
Decoded?
this.
Others can feel free to chime in
Mm.
afterwards, but I'm specifically targeting Hillary because she probably has the most context.
Oh gosh.
She knows the least.
I think, let me just think of the way to organizationally organize this.
Right.
But
Line.
Right.
effectively, you're leaning into the platform as truly a platform where it's not just about your own writing, your own perspectives, but really trying to solicit a range of perspectives about people who are doing really interesting things in the AI space with a particular focus on cities, hence the title. But really, you're just trying to get perspectives about people who, I know that you have like the era arc, with like
The era arc, the
the
daily
era
tea.
what's the formal like
It's
characterization?
it's yeah, the creator's name is the era arc, and then the series is called the Daily Tea. So
Okay, the
the Daily
daily
Tea
tea.
for short.
So for
Yeah, the
example, like
Daily Tea.
bring the daily tea to the Substack, which really highlights a lot of news about AI that you tend to not see on the headlines, but are really transformative to like the AI stack, to Austin's point, right? And then I understand there are also other creators who are attending like startup events and really writing about their field notes from attending those events. Also creators who are um, uh, also like really centering community in tech and interrogating like what that means and really like sort of questioning this, like, what is tech from different perspectives? So I think it's a very exploratory project whose meaning, I guess, is in some ways really up to the reader, which is really beautiful because it's just like what you're doing is you're bringing the perspectives together and then just kind of really giving that choice, that freedom to think, leaving that up to the reader.
Wow, you're hired. Spokesperson for
Thanks,
Cities
thanks, thanks.
Decoded.
Fill in the
Yes,
blanks.
you'll be paid in crypto in 5 years if
Ah,
the
nice,
arrow
nice.
arc is correct with where that's going. Yeah, I think Cities Decoded is filling a gap where the story of tech, as I think the four of us even demonstrate, it's so nuanced and complex. And I think that can be really unsexy at times. Like, who wants to go back and forth? Like, is tech good? Is tech bad? Is tech good? Is tech bad? And I think Cities Decoded is trying to find like a punchy, sexy way to talk about that. And I think I can only do that by inviting other voices in. And I think the creators that Hillary mentioned, like the creator of The Daily Tea, we also have Alif Misa Palat, who's writing our community in AI, and Jonathan Ben Simon, who's doing field notes in New York because he goes to every tech event in New York possible. These are true hustlers and people who I really admire. So it's not simply soliciting great voices. It's also people who I can just, I want to be friends with them. And I think that is the coolest part where, yes, they've all now written at least one piece. The Daily Tea especially is just killing it. A lot of people really enjoy that. And like, it's funny, it's witty, it's newsy, it's everything you want it to be. And I think the premise of Cities Decoded is based on my experience, what I've seen, these are the people I think should be way bigger than they are. And until that happens, and it's a matter of when, not if, I'm happy to do my part with my certain amount of subscribers to both push them and then also be able to get my perspective challenged. And that's ultimately what Cities Dakota wants to do on Substack. It's letting people think for themselves by presenting what is out there, what people are literally seeing for their own two eyes. And something we'll never say is AI is magic, and something we'll never say is AI is the end of us all. Both might be true at some point, but that's not the point. The point is this is what we are seeing, and it could be interesting to you too. So that is what I would say about Cities Decoded.
If I could pose a question for you, Sam, by no means are you a stranger to content creation and to Substack in particular, but generally like media, right?
Yeah.
How has this process, how has this project, if you will, I don't know if you want to call it that, but how has it been different from previous things that you've done?
It's been so much more fun because it involves more people. And I think I felt a bit of that too with launch, even though I think right now we're all more so doing our own things, which is good for launch in the long term. But I think I just got a kick out of like making something that's greater than the sum of its parts, as you mentioned, Hill. And I think what we're trying to do with launch and accessible intelligence. And then realizing that there are people in my life who I admire, and I have something that I can give them right now, which is a platform, and they want to be part of it. And I think it's as simple as that, where it feels bigger than me. And I think a lot of last year was just me filming videos like this and making like a respectable amount of side hustle money. But this is all money free, maybe to the dismay of some people who are involved, but that hopefully won't be the case forever. But right now it's genuinely a hobby. And I think that makes it even more exciting. It's like, oh, I could just choose not to do this because it doesn't affect my livelihood, but I'm doing it because it's really exciting and fun and challenging, but exciting and fun.
So yes, I mean, I'm so happy for you and excited about what's to come with it. Also, I want to hear more about the partnerships that you're doing with Cities Decoded. I saw it on your story. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I actually can't talk too much about that, but
Oh, non-disclosure.
there is a
That's
company I
okay.
may be closing a deal with. Yes.
Okay. That's so
They're
exciting.
trying to get the last sign off, but I think it's happening. And the reason why I've also been going after organizations that is more than just one individual is because there's this whole storytelling trend in tech. I mean, we've talked about it, but I feel like I'm very much a believe it when I see it guy. Like, for example, the office right now, we're expanding and there's like a timeline for when the expansion will be complete. I'll be like, well, I'll believe when I see it. Like it's American construction, who knows? And I think it's the same thing here where with storytelling and like how a tech company can better tell a story in the age of AI, it's kind of like, I'll believe it when I see it. And the best way to do it is like to do it. So I'm lucky that a company was even interested, and I am curious to see what storytelling looks like for this company through my lens and to see what I can do with it. Because I think that makes me feel a lot better when I inevitably have my critiques of other companies, and we all have our critiques of other companies and what people are doing, because you're like actually doing something about it. So it's basically allowing me to be judgy.
I think I actually have one other question as a follow up, which is we started this episode talking about like Megan's experience at SF effectively, right? That was when she
Yeah.
launched her startup. But from what I understand, like Cities Decoded, it does not center around SF, right? Like a lot of the people are based in New York City in particular. So can you tell me a little bit about like sort of the thinking behind that? Because I think people typically think of like Tech City in the US, like SF, right? Like
Yeah.
where does Cities Decoded like fit into that narrative?
Yes, I think that part revolves around where I'm at. Cities Decoded used to be called DC Decoded because I was in DC and now I'm in New York. So I've expanded it. I actually was going to just end the Substack after I moved. But people kept following it. Not a crazy level, but I was like, this feels wrong just to end it if I can reimagine it. Like I didn't want to just do one-on-one podcast episodes anymore. And that's not to say there isn't a future where Cities Decoded does have an SF take, but first of all, that's going to be the most saturated take ever. And I'm also not there. Like, I want to be in the cities that I talk about and make relationships with people in person to then decide if they've been creating content consistently, going to events consistently, that I can back them. And then I think what I want to do with Cities Decoded is like, I want to be super fans with these people, like Alif, John, the creator of the Daily Tea, this hypothetical company. And like, I want to show up for them more than anybody else and show like putting my money where my mouth is. And that's, I think, the next chance to see how I can do that. Yeah.
You mentioned that SF has almost the most overused take. And I remember we've talked before how DC, the AI take is more regulatory, more sync. I think you said before, like responsible AI.
Yeah.
What would you say is the New York AI take then? Because I don't know if I've heard that said out loud.
It's so business focused. I'm taking a bit of a break from going to events, but when I was going to events more, when I moved here, it's like people from big bank companies and other finance companies and then automation companies, and it's so focused on the business proposition of AI, as one can imagine, with New York being essentially the finance capital of the state. Whereas I feel like maybe talks you've seen Megan and SF, or talks like I feel like I've seen it, it's so much more technical and about the boundary pushing of AI, versus I feel like at least the few events I've gone to in New York, it feels a lot more business focused. And then you also have like this extreme art tech event side of it too, where you have these creative technologists, but still, I think at least the ones I see, they're like really successful and they seem to be doing well financially. I'm just assuming, I could be wrong, but again, it's. I don't know if there's like a struggling artist that's coming of age with AI yet, because it's so largely derided by a lot of people, like AI art. So again, I think that pushes the needle back towards, well, how do we make as much money from making AI as efficient as possible? That's the vibe I get, but definitely a lot more to report. I've like gone to probably 1% of events that I've wanted to since I've been here. So hopefully we can increase that to 5 or 10%. Yeah.
I'm excited for that on Cities Decoded.
Oh yeah.
Yes, me too. Cities Decoded is alive and well. Not that anybody would be thinking differently, but I'm happy to report that rumors of its death have been largely exaggerated. All right, should we close out with rapid fire?
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. So, what's the one tool or workflow you can't build without right now? Megan, you want to kick us off?
Okay, it's Claude for me.
Claude Code. All right, Hill.
I have to say Google Docs right now. Just documenting everything in my drives.
Why not Notion? Oh my
Well,
god.
because it's a
It's like a
this
slur.
is partnership. Partnership. We
Mhm.
thought it would be easy. It was easy for us to use Drive, but we did talk about it. I did bring it up. Don't you worry, Sam.
I appreciate that. Austin.
I guess for me, I'm gonna say Substack, just because I just like using it as a social media platform. Despite maybe it is thought of like that, but it feels so much more like an intellectual when you're able to just scroll a little comment on something and then really learn from that as well.
I agree. I would also say Substack, and I would add Notion just because I spend most of my life in there at this point. And yeah, I think I just know it too well. It's like hard for me to imagine going somewhere that doesn't use Notion at some point. So that's something for me to consider down the line. Megan, or to all of us, when Megan starts at something, if you could steal one feature from another product to drop into yours tomorrow, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. This one this was a tricky one. I'm a big fan of like the Poke AI people and what they've built. I just love the interaction.
What is that?
It's like an AI personal assistant. And I think my chat feature was largely inspired by their chat. Because they just make interacting with AI kind of fun and feel less robotic. And if I could take their sort of interface with that, I would. I just think they're doing really good stuff.
Love it. Poke AI. Helm.
I was gonna say Google Docs, but I'll just generalize it to word processor because something that my co-founder and I have been talking about is how to make the experience of a chat feel less like a chat. And I think a big part of it is like we want people to think like they're creating ideas, much like how you write out ideas in a Word document. So definitely caveats to that, but playing around with that idea.
I'm gonna say for me, it's there's this one newsletter I read called G0 Media or just G0 Daily. And one thing I really like is they have this, I guess you could call it call and response in a way, but they have their like subtitles or questions. And so that's something I borrowed for what I'm doing now because I'm really focusing and want to make it both entertaining and very well written. So that's a big focus of mine. And I think that helps bring it out.
Love that. I would say for Cities Decoded, it would probably be like any graphic designer. I feel like every time I make content, I'm like, this is like so obvious that I'm not a designer. And I know the whole conversation in tech these days is that roles are the titles and that designers can do fraud work and prompt can do engineering work. But let me tell you, some people don't have design feature bones in their body, and I'm one of them. My most consistent feedback from my boss is like, look at what your colleague is doing to format this page and like get into the right of it. Because I'm always working on the content, but usually the content is fine. So
Sounds like you
yes,
need
I'd love
Hillary
to just get like yeah, I think me and
and her
Hillary would
iPad.
make a great team. Would make a great team for that. All right, coffee, energy drinks, or just raw anxiety what's building your builds? Megan.
Oh my god, I've been on Red Bull. Terrible, I know. But
Oh
it's in my
boy.
fridge. I don't know why.
That makes me sad. But
Noted.
I've been drinking Celsius lately, but I have to say coffee. That is like my go-to.
Got it.
I'll be
Energy
the
drinks are
healthy
added
one.
about.
Oh, healthy one.
I'll be the healthy one and just say existentialism and dread
All
for the
right.
future.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's usually I write it in the afternoon, so I can't drink coffee.
Sure. I'm just getting back into coffee after being sick, and it's already like making me jittery. So it's probably going to be coffee to my own detriment, but we'll mitigate as needed. All right, do you have a building playlist or do you work in chaos? So silence, I guess.
I work in silence.
Scary.
Are you serious?
Oh my god, maniac!
Scary.
Oh, I like some Taylor Swift.
Her newest album or like old Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
Oh, old Taylor Swift. Sorry.
True. True.
Fair.
Facts.
Fair.
I've
Awesome.
been getting back into listening to classical music. I think it helps me feel like I'm writing well,
Wow.
and it sounds cool.
Yeah, I like that. Probably for me, it's either like the Free Press podcast or like Flume, the DJ. I really like his music.
Flume's good.
Yes, Flume is good. All right. And last question. Who is the last person you told about what you're building? So the most recent person.
Oh. Well, I guess you guys.
Outside of us.
Outside of you guys. Oh.
Wait, is this like last person you told for the first time or last person you just chatted with about it?
Just last, like, I think last person you chatted about is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Someone on Instagram slid up and was like, "Yo, what is this?" And then we chatted about it.
Love that.
I don't know if this is 100% correct, but I've definitely messaged a few professors, primarily under the pretense of telling them about my other writing series. But I think I dropped in there like, oh, by the way, I'm also building something else right now.
Yeah, she's a rising star.
I mean, I would say Hillary, but since you disqualified her, I would say probably one of my coworkers because I think for a
Nice.
job, both a little like thought creators. So I was interested in seeing his thoughts.
Oh, good. I'm glad you have someone like that at work. That definitely, I'm sure, helps.
His name's Carlito.
Great. Shout out Carlito. I'm going to say a name that none of you should know, but Justin Curl, I reached out to him on Substack like an hour ago. He wrote a great piece on like law and AI. He's finishing up at Harvard Law School right now. And I invited him on the podcast because I felt like the legal profession's like one of the next blocks to be dismantled by AI or disrupted. So we'll see if he responds. But shout out to Justin. Shout out Carlito. Shout out Justin. All right. In the spirit of keeping this episode focused, and also I can't hear my echo anymore because it's driving me literally insane. Thank you for tuning in to Irresistible Intelligence Season 2, Episode 2. Apologize for the echo. You hear it on your side as a viewer. Then Megan, Fig, Austin, Compute, Sam, Cities Decoded, and Hillary, Untitled. So excited. We are so proud of Megan especially. I mean, there's so much hard work and can't wait to keep updated. And feel free to listen on any podcast platforms. You might be tuning in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and Substack. If you're on Substack, consider recommending Mindful Notions, which is where Accessible Intelligence is produced. And we'll see you in a few weeks to give another update where we will all have made and share amazing progress on our various projects. Until then, take care, everyone. Bye, guys.
Bye.